Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I'm Ruth Shelley, president of the Rotary Club of Portland. Welcome to our live weekly membership meeting. Every meeting I've opened with this year's theme, Rotary opens opportunities. Yes, Rotary opens opportunities to find solutions for today's challenges. Healing from the pandemic, recovery from the economic downturn, and peace building as we seek racial justice. This week, we focus on door number 2, a sustainable economic recovery, as our speaker, Jeff Allen, talks with us about the transition to electric vehicles in Oregon. But first, let's welcome past President and Assistant Governor, Rotarian Chris Ackerman, for our reflection. Chris?
Thank you, Ruth. I wanted to reflect today on access to education. All of us, based on where we grew up, have had that access in one form or another. But we all know that that access is unevenly distributed around the world. Last February, I had the opportunity to visit a school in Guatemala called MIA. And MIA is a very interesting model in that they started with the concept of if you educate women, you can change society. And there's a lot of data to reflect that. And then they broke it down and they said, if you educate Indigenous women, you can change society. And they have established a school led by Indigenous women largely as the administrators and teachers, and they have built it grade by grade to now I don't know if they've managed to do it with COVID, but they started with the 5th grade, they're now up to like the 10th grade. So they have roughly 100 girls from a very wide range of communities in central Guatemala who are attending this school. And they've achieved a remarkable thing in that if you figure that most Guatemalan Indigenous women have had their first baby by age 14 or 15, this school has gotten the families of these girls to agree that they will finish high school. And that in itself is a remarkable achievement. But all of these girls are learning their own native Mayan language, Spanish, and English. So you're creating a cadre of very highly educated women in that society through this school. So as we reflect today, think about the gift of education and how in various forms that gift can be distributed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. A good reminder to us all. And if you'd like to volunteer to give the reflection, Siobhan has put the link in the chat, or you can email her directly. Please consider doing so. Before we go on, I wanted to let you know that Rotarian Jim Milne passed away on December 21st. Jim was 95 and our most veteran member of 57 years of service above self. Siobhan will put a link to his obituary in the chat and will let you know when memorial plans are made. Thank you for remembering him and his family. What an incredible life. Now, I would ask that Rotarians who have invited a guest to raise their real or virtual hand, and Maria will call on you to unmute and introduce them. Or if you're a visiting Rotarian who came on your own, please raise your hand and introduce yourself and let us know of your presence via the chat box. Danielle, I know that you already have a guest. Would you please?
Yes, it's my pleasure today to welcome Kirsten Shank. We've had a chance to meet just recently, and she's looking at understanding more about the clubs in the Portland area. So I've invited her to a number of our committees and functions, and of course to the meeting today. Kirsten, welcome to Portland Rotary.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here.
So glad you're here. I think that's all of our guests, but if any others arrive, we will catch them during the course of the meeting. And now it's February. I would like to extend a happy birthday to everyone with birthdays this month. We alternate each week honoring birthdays and anniversaries. And right now we see the birthdays coming up. As we see all of these people celebrating February birthdays, please reach out with your happiest of greetings. Today, we also think about the passing of Hal Holbrook, who played Mark Twain over so many performances. And Mark Twain is famous for saying that age is an aspect of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Happy birthday, everyone. Now, please welcome Rotarian Mike Rosenberg to call for club board member nominations. Mike?
Thank you, Ruth. So as I mentioned last week, Rotary Board of Director nominations are open. The details of that are that it's a 2-year term going into effect on July 1st of this year. To be eligible to be nominated to our club's board, a nominee must be a member in good standing for 2 years as of that next date. So at the end of June would have to be a second year. You qualify. You could have been a board member in the past. You can serve again. And for those who are interested in becoming an officer of our club, this is really the first step in doing that is by joining the board. Also note that you can nominate yourself. If you're nominating someone else, please confirm their acceptance before you actually make that nomination. Of course, if you're nominating yourself, you can have that internal conversation. If you have questions, I'm sure any past or current board members, including myself, would be happy to answer them, in regards to time commitment, responsibilities, those sort of things. Once you have a confirmation, or if you want to nominate yourself, you have in a moment here a chance to do it, or you can also send that to me in email, and we'll make sure that that happens next week. And once we have those next week, our goal is to hold those elections next week as well. So do we have any, I guess I'll throw it to the floor to see if we have any. I think we'll put up the nomination wording. And if there's anybody there, we can call on anybody who wants to make a nomination today. Raise that hand or just jump in. All right. I'm not seeing any, so it'll have to all be next week. So think about those nominations. I'll put my email in the chat, or of course you can send it to Siobhan as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And please do consider this incredible way to serve our club. And now, please welcome Rotarian Leslie Brunker to announce a COVID-friendly international dinner for February. Leslie?
Hi, thanks, Ruth. Hey, everybody. February is International Service Month with Rotary. And every year we have a fabulous international dinner that Nihad arranges for us to go out. But this year, of course, since we can't go out, we're going to do a little different international celebration, which is we're going to travel every week in our kitchens. So watch the spokes and you'll get an international recipe to try out every week, featuring countries that this club has done projects in. We'll start this Friday with recipes from Colombia, and next Friday, recipes from Guatemala. And we will be traveling also to Fiji, Cambodia, and possibly Egypt this month. So watch the spokes and try out the recipes and let us know how they work for you. This will be fun, and we'll all get to compare our results. Enjoy. Thank you.
That sounds great, Leslie. And if you and your family try any of the recipes, please share them with us on social media. We'd love to see everyone's creations. Well, as Leslie mentioned, this is International Service Month, and we welcome past president and past district governor, Rotarian Danielle Banks, to tell you about our International Service Committee, Committee of the Month. Danielle?
Thank you, President Ruth. In the last 20 plus years, we've supported or led projects in 23 countries around the world. And from cash and matching funds from the district and the Rotary Foundation, and with our partners, we've leveraged our budgeted funds to an estimated $1.5 million. Every 12 to 18 months, at least one person has traveled internationally to make project site visits, meet with partner Rotarians and NGOs, non-government organizations, estimating about 40 trips in total. It's our relationships that keep our projects successful. So this month, we want you to meet several of our partners. Today, please welcome two past presidents from the Victoria Harborside Club in British Columbia, Mary Coward and Chris Dysart. Mary?
Well, thank you very much, Danielle. And thank you, Chris, too, for your reflection, which was very thoughtful, but also a perfect introduction to this part of the program. Victoria Harborside Club has partnered with Portland for many years to support women's entrepreneurship. I first met Danielle in 2007 in San Salvador at one of the Uniendo project fairs. And Danielle, with the support of your club, was already a leader in promoting microcredit. And at that time, the question was, should Rotary clubs be delivering this program themselves or get non-governmental organizations to deliver the program? And over the years, we tried several models, settling on the latter, partnering with experienced NGOs to deliver effective programs in their area. We also determined that providing microcredit loans was only one piece of the puzzle. Equally important was providing training and support for the women. And over the years, our club has continued to benefit from Portland's leadership, and together we've had a positive impact on the lives of women and their families in Antigua. Why Antigua? Well, in part because of our long relationships, I think, as Chris also mentioned in his reflections. But Guatemala remains one of the poorest countries in the world by all measures, and the women, especially Indigenous women, suffer poverty, poor health, and limited opportunities. For both grants, we partnered with Fundación Namaste Guatemala. Namaste is an organization headquartered in Guatemala. And the picture behind me shows Eugenia, their director, in the gray jacket, and also Oscar Torres, who is our contact with the Antigua Rotary Club. We've done two grants together with you in 2014 and 2018. And the total for the two grants was $142,000. And through these, we supported 256 women and their families. We're grateful for Portland's club contributions of $10,000, plus another $5,000 from your district funds. And the World Rotary Fund contributed almost $57,000. And then along came COVID. I'll now call on Chris Dysart, my colleague, to talk about our new project. Chris.
Thank you, Mary. I'd like to point out the brightly colored fabric behind me. This traditional weaving is still widely worn by Indigenous peoples in Guatemala and is sold and or woven by some of Namaste's clients. COVID-19 has been a major disruptor of Namaste's programs. Lockdowns prevented clients from running their businesses and they suffered huge losses. Throughout the lockdowns, Namaste stayed connected to their clients and began providing their training virtually. They allowed clients to defer their loan payments. But when economies began to open up, their loan fund was running low, and 55 women being trained under our global grant needed loans of $395 each. In September, we set a goal to raise $22,000 for a direct grant for Namaste's loan fund. In 4 months, we achieved our goal with participation from 5 Rotary clubs in District 5020, from the Berlin Rotary Club in Germany, from 3 individual donors, and you. Thank you, Portland Rotary, for your contribution of $2,000. When the project is complete, this money will remain in the loan fund to benefit more women entrepreneurs in the future. This small project is an example of the power of the Rotary Network. Together with our local and international partners, we can achieve so much more than we can individually. We value our Rotary relationships. We especially value our long-standing relationship with you. Thank you for having Mary and myself to share your meeting today. It's fun to see how different clubs do different things, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Danielle, any closing words?
Yes, you'll notice that Chris and Mary and I have virtual backgrounds reflective of this particular project. But I bet most of you have traveled internationally. And if so, whether it's for a Rotary service project or not, I would like to encourage you, or we, our committee, would like to encourage you to put up a virtual international background like some of our other committee members are doing. If you look around the screen, you'll see that Nancy Wernicke has the arch in Antigua on her virtual background. I'd like to see yours as well.
Great idea. Thank you, Mary, Chris, and Danielle, for this very important international work. We're happy to be part of it. Now we're going to disappear and enter a virtual table talk. Please introduce yourselves to others in your group. A minute or so before you come back to this main meeting, you'll get a visual heads up. And may I suggest a topic for your discussion? Today, we're learning about electric vehicles. What has been your experience with electric vehicles, if any? And would you buy one? You might change your mind after today's presentation. Here we go. Starting again in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now on to our program. I had the pleasure of having Jeff in our breakout room, and he's got a fascinating topic. After he's done today, if you'd like to ask Jeff a question, Maria will moderate the Q&A through the chat box as usual. Now, please welcome Rotarian Mark Favinci as today's chair of the day. Mark?
Thank you, President Ruth. As you probably saw in the news just a few days ago, last Thursday, General Motors announced that its entire fleet of offerings will be electric vehicles by 2035. They will not offer any gasoline or diesel-powered cars or trucks. And even before that, last November, the United Kingdom announced that it will ban the sale of gasoline and diesel cars in 2030, and California and Massachusetts plan to do the same in 2035. All this is 10 to 15 years in the future, but electric vehicles are upon us right now, and we are witnessing the transition away from gas and diesel. Oregon's been a leader in this transition. In 2011, the Oregon legislature funded a new one-person organization called Drive Oregon. The purpose was to help the state attract investment and jobs in the emerging electric vehicle industry. Drive Oregon is now known as Fourth, has 27 employees, does work across the country. It is independent of state funding now, but is still led by that first employee, Jeff Allen. Today, we are very pleased and honored to have Jeff speak to us on how all that moves will be electric in my lifetime. Lastly, I need to add that after hearing Jeff speak a couple weeks ago, I decided that my next car needs to be electric. Let's welcome Jeff Allen. Jeff?
Well, thanks for that introduction. And that's one down. A few billion to go, but we're going to see if we can make a few more converts here before our time is up. So let me see if I'm successful in sharing screen here. And I'm going to try and jump through a few slides, but I do want to make sure we have some time for questions at the end. And I put my email in the chat box. Please do feel free to visit our website or reach out to me if I don't get to your questions. So I should say with this title, I tweaked it a little bit because I thought about it as like maybe I'm tempting fate to say I'm going to be alive for another 10 or 20 years, but hopefully that's not too much of a stretch. But I do want to talk about today a little bit about Fourth and who we are, not too much of a commercial, And then why electric mobility is such an important transformative thing. It's not just about getting a different kind of car. There's really a lot more to it. And then help folks understand just how fast it's coming. And the last week has certainly helped with that. And then give you some ideas for how you can plug in. And yes, this line of work is filled with bad pun opportunities. So I put some headlines up here. One that was just mentioned was GM's recent announcement. You may have also seen President Biden announce he's going to replace the entire federal fleet with electric vehicles. That's about 500,000 vehicles. This last one, if you're an investor or you follow the stock market, all the electric vehicle stocks have been going bonkers this last year or so. This is to me still incomprehensible that Tesla, which has rarely been profitable, is worth more than all the other major car companies in the world combined. So some folks are betting on this trend. Let's talk a little bit about Forth, first of all, quickly. So as mentioned, we're a nonprofit organization. We're based right here in Portland. My background behind me is our showroom in downtown Portland, which has unfortunately been closed and boarded up. But when things start to reopen, it's at the World Trade Center downtown. And our mission is really to accelerate electrification of everything that moves. And we do that because we care about the environmental benefits, but also because we care about the economic and social benefits. I'll get into that. Very quickly, we do a lot of work being the connective tissue across this ecosystem. We do policy advocacy in states and at the national level. We do a lot of demonstration projects because this is, as I say, it's not just dropping a different kind of a motor into a vehicle. It's really a whole different business model. And now electric utilities are fuel providers. Local and state governments have to interact differently. Different companies in this space have to interact differently. And a lot of times they need somebody like us to put the pieces together and figure out how this is all going to work in the real world. And then we do a lot of work accelerating market adoption, which is really just helping more people realize what's available and how it can work for them. So why should you care about this? As I mentioned, obviously there's big environmental benefits. Carbon pollution, climate change, greenhouse gas emissions are about 80% lower today from an electric vehicle, but also things like you don't have tailpipe air pollution, you don't have to drill for oil. But it's not just about the environment. There's some big economic benefits as well. If you look at your electricity bill, the price of your electricity does not gyrate all over the place every time there's some unrest in the Middle East. It's much more stable, it's highly regulated. There's some reasons for that are regulatory, but also the fact that electricity can be generated from a lot of different sources. So you really have a diverse fuel supply as opposed to depending on one product that only comes from a few places, many of which don't like us very much. But the last point, which I think is really where I should start, and the one that doesn't get said enough, is that electric cars are just better cars. They are a lot more fun to drive. You get instant torque, whatever speed you're going. So even in my little used $10,000 electric Golf, I floor it when I'm going 60 miles an hour down the freeway and it takes off. It doesn't have to be a Tesla to get that kind of performance. And the batteries give it a real low center of gravity, so the cars tend to handle really well. And of course, I would never floor it when I'm going 60 unless I'm in a 75 mile per hour zone, just for the record. Let's dig a little bit deeper, though, into some of those benefits, particularly climate change and the environmental benefits. I think especially when I'm talking in the Northwest, I get asked these questions a lot about, well, they're still cars. Are they really better for the environment? And you shouldn't take my word for it, but this is a graphic from our colleagues at the Union of Concerned Scientists, who have estimated that most recently driving an electric car in the Northwest is like driving a car that gets 102 miles per gallon, if there were such a thing, which of course there isn't. Nationwide, the average is about 88 miles per gallon, and the average new car, or the average gas car nationwide, gets about 20 miles per gallon. So it's a big improvement. And probably the most amazing thing about electric cars and the environment is it's the only car you can buy that gets cleaner every year. because our electrical grid is getting cleaner. We're shutting down coal plants. We're not building new coal plants. And so that car you buy, unlike your gas car, that car is going to be cleaner every year. Let's talk a little bit more about the economics too. This is a little bit of a wonky measure, but it's the best that Department of Energy has come up with to help folks understand the cost of driving electric. And basically what it says is driving an electric car is like getting gasoline for $1 a gallon, because the cars are more efficient and electricity is cheaper. They also cost a lot less to maintain than a gas car. There's fewer moving parts. There's no oil changes. Basically, all you have to do is fill the wiper fluid and occasionally change some tires. This also gets to that point that they're just a lot cheaper to maintain, average savings of about $800 a year for most folks. It's not just about the economic benefits to the driver, though. And this is another one that I think gets overlooked quite a bit, is that transportation is the #2 household expense for most families behind housing. And one of the statistics that just floored me as I got into this work was that commute time is the #1 predictor of a family being able to escape poverty. And there's also impacts of people being killed on the roads and so forth. And this is also not random. So I put up here, folks may have recognized this. This is the redlining map of Portland. So there's a reason that low-income families and communities of color typically have much higher commuting expenses and wind up living in places near freeways. It's not by chance, it's because public policy forced them into those areas. And electric mobility has the potential to really disrupt some of that history of inequality by lowering those commute costs, by cleaning air in some of those communities, and helping lift more families out of poverty if we do it right. And then, as mentioned, they're just a lot more fun to drive. I mentioned the center of gravity and the acceleration. They're also very quiet. One of my favorite stories when I started doing this work 10 years ago was hearing the General Motors engineers talking about how when they first were building the Volt, which some folks may remember was a car that could go on a battery and also could run on a gas engine. And they redesigned the powertrain, that was fine. And then they got in the car to drive it. They said, "What is that racket? What is that noise?" And they figured out it was the ventilation system, which you never heard in a gas car because the engine is so loud. But when you didn't have that engine noise to cover it up, all of a sudden you could hear the fans and the belts and the other things that were running. There's also a lot of great discounts on electric vehicles. So there's a federal tax credit that's up to $7,500 off. There's a state rebate that Forth helped pass a couple of years ago that can take $2,500 off the purchase or lease of a new electric vehicle, up to 10 vehicles. So if you have a business, if you have fleet vehicles, you can also get that. And it's not a tax credit, it's a rebate, point of purchase when you buy the car. And one of the best things we did in this program was we included a double rebate for income qualifying households. So if you're a low and moderate income household, you can get up to $5,000 off of a new electric car, or off up to $2,500 off of a used electric vehicle. And then there's also utility programs and savings. And we have a lot more information on incentives on our website at forthmobility.org. So I want to get in a little bit to what's here already, what's coming. This, by the way, is a great picture from one of our demonstration projects up in the Cully neighborhood of Portland, where we put some shared electric vehicles next to the Hacienda housing development there that were available to be rented by the hour or by the day. And these were our first renters who took the car to go on a little holiday. So what are we already seeing here? We already have way over 1.5 million electric cars in the United States. This is data from the end of 2019, so it's a bit dated at this point, but there's a lot of cars out there already, and you can see how the sales have grown. this is a fact that blows a lot of people away. It's not just about Tesla. There are, in fact, over 50 different electric vehicle models available in Oregon today. I'm not going to go through all of them. I will say we have on our website a guide to every vehicle, every electric and plug-in vehicle that is available in Oregon. So feel free to go look at that PDF and look through it. But I wanted to highlight just a couple to show you the spectrum. One is the Nissan Leaf. That's probably one that a lot of people have heard about. Current version of that has a range of between 150 and 226 miles. Base price of just under $30,000 before incentives. And another one that folks probably have heard about is the Tesla. This is the quote unquote affordable Tesla. That's between $38,000 and $47,000, range of about 260 to 350 miles. If you ask anyone who's driven one of these cars, has one of these cars, they have amazing customer loyalty. It's quite an experience to test drive. But then also another thing folks don't necessarily think about a lot is that increasingly we're seeing used electric vehicles. These vehicles have been out long enough now that we're seeing some come off of lease. And these are, again, a couple of extremes just to show you a sense. 2013 Nissan Leaf, admittedly, you got to make sure this is a car that's going to work for you. It probably has a range of 50, 60 miles. But the average American only drives about 20, 25 miles a day. So that works really well for a lot of people who just want a car to get to work and back. And this one was available for $6,500. And as I mentioned, if you're qualified, income qualified, you can take $2,500 off of that. So now it's a $4,000 car. And again, back to my earlier point, if you can take a family that has a car that perhaps cost them $1,000 to buy on Craigslist, but they're spending $500 a month on gas and trying to keep it maintained and keep it operating so that they can get to work reliably, and put them into something like this that costs $20 a month to charge up, that's going to have a huge impact on that family's ability to build wealth over time. At sort of another data point, this is actually the car that I have, not literally this car, but the 2016 e-Golf, which is available for about $12,000 with 25,000 miles on it. And, on a good day, that car has a range of almost 100 miles. On a cold winter day like we've been having, it has a range of probably 60, 65 miles. But again, that's more than enough for what I use it for. And there's a lot more models coming. The big thing that many people are looking forward to, myself included, are pickup trucks. We've not had many pickup truck or SUV models that were affordable. There's a few, but they tend to be imports and luxury brands that are more expensive, and really no pickup trucks, but that's going to change in a hurry. And I also want to make sure and highlight, we're not just talking about cars, we're talking about everything that moves people or goods. So these products on the top here, these are all from Daimler Trucks. As I said, they're manufacturing the e-Cascadia and this EM2 at Swan Island. This is their school bus model and a smaller product they have. This tractor is actually one that Forth owns. We're doing a project out in Dufur, testing electric tractors and how those operate in the real world. So just got these pictures this week from it being delivered out in Dufur. And then this is a transit bus that TriMet operates right here in Portland that you may see around. So there's some big things, and there's also small things, right? Electric assist bikes, scooters, these small cargo delivery vehicles that UPS and others are testing. This vehicle in the bottom right corner is the Arcimoto. It's headquartered and manufactured right here in Eugene, Oregon. Goes up to 80 miles an hour, costs less than $20,000. Very quickly, one of the questions we get asked a lot is, all right, so I buy this car, where am I going to plug it in? And I think there's just a lot of confusion about how do you plug it in? How long does it take to charge? I always tell people who ask, how long does it take to charge the car? How long does it take to charge your phone? Right? And I think most of us can't answer that question. because I just get home and I plug the phone in and the next morning it's ready to go. I have no idea how long it takes to charge my phone. For most people, most of the time, that's how the car works. You plug it in when you get home at night and you get up the next morning, it's ready to go. But it is important that people have some access to public charging. These are the fast chargers at the World Trade Center downtown. They can put something like 80 to 100 miles of range into your car in half an hour of charging. So if you're on the go and you realize you're running low, you can plug in and take care of that. It's also really helpful for people to be able to charge at work, especially if you don't have a good place to charge at home. Studies show that if you can charge at work, you're 6 times more likely to purchase an electric vehicle. So we really encourage employers to do that. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over this other than to say, if you run a business and you're going to start having people coming back to your office, I really encourage you to think about providing charging and encouraging those folks to commute by electric vehicle. There's also a number of ways to find charging stations. The most common is PlugShare, which is an app and a website you can go to. And I just grabbed, this is a map of chargers in Oregon. And most people, when they see this, are kind of shocked at how many charging stations there are in Oregon. These orange ones are the fast chargers I was talking about that can charge you up 100 miles in half an hour, give or take. And you'll see we pretty well have I-5 and the coast and some other major travel corridors covered, and there's more of those coming every year. So you may be thinking, if this is so prevalent and it's coming so fast and it's so wonderful, why haven't I heard more about it until the last couple of weeks? And the short version is, this is one of my favorite quotes from a sci-fi writer I really like. The future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. And this map shows electric vehicle share of new vehicle registrations. And you can really see it's really the left coast, Colorado, and a few other islands. It's not really a national market. A lot of these vehicles are only available in a few states. They're very new. They've really only been around for less than 10 years, and cars are something you don't shop for very often, most of us. And they also haven't gotten a lot of the advertising dollars because they've been less profitable for car companies to sell than some of their gas vehicles. So there's a number of reasons for that. Here's some things you can do about it. If you haven't test driven an electric car, you should do that. As soon as you feel safe, going to a dealership or doing that. And as things open up again, Forth typically does dozens of ride and drive events, and we have different electric vehicle models at our showroom that you can come down and test drive if you don't want to deal with a dealership. Meanwhile, you can get on our email list, sit in on some of our webinars, which include sort of some virtual test drives and things like that. And of course, we have social media and all those kinds of things. But I think with that, I will stop and see if we have time for a question or two.
We do. Thank you so much, Jeff. We have a couple Rotarians in the queue with a question. I'm going to start with Rotarian Tara Henderson. Tara?
Thank you, Maria. I kind of have 2 questions. I'll do them really quick. I'm wondering what happens when the demand, or everybody gets these cars and the demand for the energy goes up. Does the cost of electricity then go up and operating the vehicle go up? And secondly, what happens if you run out of a charge and there's no charging station? Does AAA come help you?
Yes, let me take that one first. Yes, absolutely. There's a bunch of things that they do, the cars are designed to do to keep you from running out of a charge, like a low gas engine warning. They start giving you warnings. They get increasingly strident in telling you, really, you need to charge. And then when you get down to a couple of miles, they go into what they call turtle mode. And it's a point of pride among EV drivers to have turtled your car. And that means what it sounds like. The car slows down. It won't go over like 5 miles per hour. And it gives you just another mile or two of range in case you're on the freeway and you need to get to the next exit or something like that. And then yes, AAA will come and tow you to the nearest charger or tow you back home. But that happens a lot less often than you might fear. And it doesn't usually happen more than once. On the grid question, also a great question. Actually, what we found is that electric vehicles help drive down electricity costs for everyone, because most of the charging happens naturally at night, and there's a lot of excess capacity at night. And so it's very cheap load to serve. And you're basically you're making more sales on the same fixed costs. And so the per unit cost of kilowatt hour goes down. There've been a bunch of studies of, what happens to the grid and the distribution system as more people adopt these cars. And what they've found so far is even in the places that have the highest adoption and the fastest adoption, there's some very minor impacts on the transmission system. On the distribution system. So at the neighborhood level, like if you and all of your neighbors on the block buy Teslas in the same month, then they might have to upgrade that local distribution system. But even in the highest adoption areas, that's been less than 1% of their regular annual upgrade cycle. So pretty modest costs. As one utility person told me, this is a lot less traumatic than dealing with air conditioning when everybody started to get air conditioners.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Rotarian Leslie Brunker. Leslie?
Hi, thank you. I have an environmental concern and wondering about the disposal or recycling of the batteries. Can you address that, please?
Yes, that's definitely a question I've heard a lot. And there is no free lunch. So there's definitely environmental impacts to manufacturing these cars. And a lot of them come from the battery and from some of the rare earth materials that go into the battery manufacturing. So a couple of things. One is lead acid batteries that are already in your car also are a big environmental concern. And they are one of the most recycled products on the planet. And as one car person told me, it's because the lead in the battery is worth 10 or 20 bucks. Well, the average battery pack in an electric car is worth $5,000 or $10,000. So they're not going to be landfilled. I can guarantee you that. There's a bunch of studies going on around reuse of those packs, because even when they degrade, when my car gets so bad 10, 15, 20 years from now that I only have a 20-mile range, that's not really functional, but that battery still has utility. You can, for example, use that as the backup on that local distribution system I was talking about. The utility can install it there, or a house could use it for emergency power in a natural disaster. So it still has usefulness. And then there's also companies that are working on actually recycling the battery and making new batteries out of that material. And one of our members that's doing that is actually based right here in Bend. It's a company called Onto Technologies. So there's a lot of innovation happening in that space too.
Thank you. Our next question is from Rotarian Chris Achterman. Chris?
Well, actually, am I unmuted? Yes. So actually, Leslie stole my question in the sense of recycling batteries, but I'll jump to another one. You talked about the trucks becoming available. Can you just give us, I'm familiar with a couple and they're on the very expensive end. Are there any trucks coming along that are of a more modest nature?
I'm a truck guy myself, so I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's going to be a couple years. There's a plug-in version of the F-150 coming. There are some startup companies like the Tesla truck you may have read about, which is not my thing, but some people love it. But there's some other startups like Rivian and Lordstown Motors. None of those are really what I would call cheap. And they're going to be in pretty short supply for the first year or two. And a lot of them are going to go to either fleet customers or high-end. Rivian is initially targeting folks who want to go off-roading. And so they'll buy a $75,000 truck because it has all this cool built-in, surfboard carriers and I don't know what else. So it's going to be a couple of years yet. There are some SUVs that are pretty affordable. In Fourth's fleet, we actually have a Mitsubishi Outlander, which is a plug-in hybrid. So it'll go 20 miles on electricity and then the gas engine kicks in. And I think that, don't hold me to this, but I think that was less than $20,000. So it's very affordable. And again, for most people, you're driving to get a latte. the electric range is fine, but when you want to go backpacking, you really don't want to be worried about finding a charger. So that works really well for lots of folks.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next question is from Rotarian Scott Burns. Scott?
Thank you very much. Back to the batteries. I'm a geologist, and the one thing that geologists are concerned about is the supply of rare earth minerals for this huge battery demand. And so what is the latest? Are we going to have enough rare earth minerals for batteries?
Scott, I thought you looked familiar. We crossed paths way back when I ran the Crater Lake Trust.
Oh,
I think we had you speak. It's a really good question. I don't think the issue is running out of them. I think the issue is where they're located. It's like oil. Unfortunately, some of these things are concentrated in places like China or the Congo, where we're worried about either kind of geopolitics or labor practices locally. So there's a lot of innovation going into other sources of lithium, like actually geothermal energy production. Sometimes I'm gonna get in trouble talking to you about this, but I guess sometimes geothermal wells, the steam has lithium content in it that they can extract. But also there's a lot of innovation happening around battery technology to try and come up with new chemistries that don't require as much of that material. So I think we'll see a lot of that over the next decade too.
Thank you. And we have one final question from our guest today, Kirsten Schenk. Kirsten?
Thank you, and thanks for saying my name right. Well done. Jeff, you just kind of just touched on this already, but I just did a quick research on the mining practices that are necessary for that lithium, and it's kind of staggering, and I'm not trying to throw too much shade at this very viable alternative to fuel consuming vehicles, but this is just talking about one instance in particular, but it says that 2 million liters of H2 of water are needed to produce 1 ton of lithium. And in Chile, in Salar de Atacama, mining activities consumed 65% of the water in the area, depleting the groundwater and contaminating soil, forcing communities to abandon ancestral settlements. So, I know that everyone's doing their best to fix these very big issues, but just something to think about.
Yeah, and I definitely, I come from an environmental advocacy background, and I think it's important to say, if you could walk or ride a bike, that's much better than driving a car at all. And there's no car that's free of impacts. I do think it's important to keep in mind, most of the lithium is still going into batteries for things like your smartphone and your laptop computer. And also just to, the compared to what question of if you've ever seen an oil refinery, they're not pretty either. So I think it's like reduce, reuse, recycle, right? We're all doing a good job this year of traveling less, unfortunately. But we should all be looking at, can we walk, can we bike, can we take transit? I like to say it's like those old cigarette commercials. Folks old enough to remember that is like, if you must smoke, please smoke, blah, blah, blah. If you must drive, please drive electric.
That's a good note on which to end. Such
Yeah.
great questions. Next week, we'll hear from Derek Olson, president of World Oregon, on Oregon's relationship with the rest of the globe. This meeting will once again be live by Zoom at noon on Tuesday. As we close, I want to thank our virtual guests today, Christine, Mary, Kirsten, Michael. We're so glad you joined us. Chris, thank you for our reflection. Mike, thank you for reminding us of board nominations, and everyone, please consider this opportunity for service. Leslie, thank you for spearheading that COVID-safe international dinner idea. And Daniil, thank you for your insight into our International Service Committee. Mark, we appreciated your speaker introduction. And Jeff, thank you for your informative and relevant presentation. I can't resist the pun that I'm feeling all powered up. As we enter into a new Rotary Week, please join me in opening the doors of opportunity for healing, recovery, and peace building. As Rotarians, we're here to make our world healthier, more sustainable, and with justice for all. Have a good week, everyone, and this meeting is adjourned.